Hello guys, we are Group 3. In the following presentation, we are going to compare the main characters between Bartleby, the Screenrunners, and No Longer Human for these two novels. First, I will introduce the book No Longer Human. The Chinese name of the book is called 人间失格. No Longer Human is a 1948 Japanese novel by Osamu Daisaku. We call him Daisaku in Chinese. The book is considered Daisaku's masterpiece and ranks as the second best-selling novel ever in Japan. The book is written 1 century later than the body. The novel, written in first person, contains several elements which portray an autobiographical basis, but is in fact categorized under semi-autobiographical genre since the characters in the book are all fictional. The novel presents recurring themes in the author's life, including suicide, social alienation, and depression. No Longer Human is told in the form of notebooks left by the main character, by Yodo. In Chinese, we call him 大庭业障. He is a troublemaker who is incapable of revealing his true self to others. The book is made up of 3 chapters, which chronicle the life of Oba from his early childhood to his late 20s. In general, the book narrates the whole life of the main character, including his life in the upper-class family, his relationship with his stepfather, and interaction with his friends. He had been sent to hospital and asylum. To summarize, the book is about the main character's absurd life. 这样。
Okay, 换我. So this is the outline of the second part. Firstly, I will introduce you to the main character, Yozo, the novel No Longer Human, and why choose mental health as the main discussion topic for this part of presentation. Then I'll briefly talk about the symptoms of depression in order to analyze the 2 characters in the text we are going to talk about. The character in this novel, Yozo, although he was smart in school, he felt isolated, uncomprehending of others' behavior, and convinced that he was not qualified as a human being. He had been sexually abused by servants, sent to college in Tokyo. He neglected his study. He also became involved with an unhappy bar hostess whose husband is in prison, and he attempts suicide with her, but only he survived. Then his life going downward, involving the influence of alcohol, another suicide attempt, morphine addiction, and finally sent to a mental institution. In the section of common mental illness, the major types of disorder are depression and anxiety. The rate is almost over 90%, so it is not a rare illness. And from the Bartleby a Scrivener, the narrator said, I might give an oath to his body, but his body did not thank him. It was his soul that suffered, and his soul I could not reach. I have friends and family suffering from mental illness. I often feel the sense that there's nothing I could do for them because sometimes they are trapped in the island they create in their mind and forbid anyone to come near or do anything about it. So for those who cares and loves them, only get to see how they gradually sink into an abyss of self-destruction. These are some symptoms of depression which we will compare with the text later on, such as negative thinking, loss of intention, interest or pleasure, reduced appetite and weight loss, or increased craving for food and weight gain, feeling of worthlessness or guilt, fixating on past failures, or self-blame. We can see how depression can affect a man and his work in the story. Bartleby slowly starts to show his depression through his lack of motivation to do his work. He shows that his passive-aggressive refusal by saying, I would prefer not to. There is a slow path to death through his refusal to eat food. In an introduction between Mr. Cutler and Bartleby, Mr. Cutler invited Bartleby to dinner at a paid request of the narrator, and Bartleby replies, to their dismay, "I prefer not to dine today. It would disagree with me. I am unused to dinners." As shown in his response, his willingness to eat and live is what eventually leads to his death. There are some of the reasons why Yozo becomes so depressed in my view. One is that he feels like he must have been an alien and disconnected from the others because his own parents didn't try to connect with him. He is also a very sensitive child. Plus, it's implied he was sexually abused by the servants at a young age, which would thus destroy any child's trust in others. And his mental issue also lead to his eating disorder. I believe that Yozo and Osamu Daiza himself suffer from complex PTSD, which explains so much of his behaviors and feelings such as timidity, alienation, fear, and self-hatred. 好，我这边结束。
有看到阵容吗？
In my part, I will talk about the isolation existing in both novels. Also, some relevant inferences about the relationship between authors and their works. First, as the last presenter said, in No Longer Human, Yozo remains considers himself peculiar and dissimilar to others, and he pretends to be a clown between crowds of people, attempting to find a usual person. One thing that we should note is that he relates to those who are birds of a feather, and even once makes an effort to live for loved ones, which is far different from Bartleby's consistent loneliness. Nonetheless, he ultimately couldn't prevail over his exacerbated mentality. Therefore, he loses his mentality and emptily survives in the world in an asylum, even though he attempts to commit suicide. Compared with Yozo's rugged alteration of mindset, Bartleby remains stably in dismay and doesn't rely on any external objects throughout the novel. In my view, apart from Bartleby's innatively vulnerable nature, his last job plays a crucial role in his death. The rumors reveal that Bartleby worked for many years at a dead letter office. The point is still letters, which for some reason cannot be delivered to their intended destination. They are a form of failed communication through language. In that way, that letters serve as a symbol of disconnection. It seems to me that the author utilizes this kind of description to state that Bartleby's experience in the office was the reason for his depression and his loss of motivation. Because those state papers had killed all feelings and emotions in his life, this causes his further path to solitude and his inaction in survival. In addition, this novel is not just about the person who has imprisoned himself in the working office, but about the whole society of the 1850s, where people were isolated from others in their offices and were working. Wall Street is the symbol of capitalism, and the entire society makes me feel that this working environment stifles humanity's spirits with mechanization and the negation of labor rights of souls. As for the words, it seems to me that they are the symbols of his isolation, imprisonment, and the ragged job which he looks forward to, and it also stands for the solitude and indifference on Wall Street. Therefore, it's apparently difficult to form a relationship with others in this prosperous region. Even though the environment was not hostile, it was definitely too cool for certain people to maintain a healthy mentality so that they gradually isolate themselves from others. What's more, after comprehending Melville, it seems that effects of such an environment, not only Bartleby but the author himself couldn't adjust himself to it, and confronted the upcoming strangling feelings because he was constrained to choose between art and money. Especially we know that the Bartleby the Scrivener was published after his stylish transformation. Similarly, the author of No Longer Human suffered from the social atmosphere at World War II, which challenged many contemporary Japanese people's egos. It appears that the authors were isolated from their context to an extent as well. Lastly, it seems that many students at NCCU feel anxious and depressed, including me. After I wrote these words, I felt grateful to those who had been willing to listen to me and give me suggestions. On this campus, I really received much help from others, and this is invaluable. I hope that I could then help favor to others like those who helped me, now and in the future.
Okay, and that is my part, and I'm talking about the conclusion of the Bartleby the Scrivener, and the symbol of the two main character, which is Bartleby and the lawyer. So, in conclusion, what Bartleby the Scrivener and No Longer Human have in common are that both of them isolate themselves because of external factors and mental disorders. For external factors, we know that all of the characters in the book, except the lawyers, including Bartleby's colleague and the customer of the office, are indifferent to Bartleby. Similarly, Yozo felt he was alienated from others because of the absence of concern from his parents and the experience of sexual harassment by the servant when he was young. These factors triggers him to become sensitive and neurotic. Thus, we think that Bartleby stands for the concept of isolation and solitariness for someone who worked in like a very busy place like the Wall Street. So the character is totally isolated from others, and there is no interest in him to even speak or talk about or to talk with others. The co-workers, and moreover, the co-workers of Bartleby and other characters are not also attempting to make a conversation with him. And through the story, we can know that there is no possibility of having a conversation, and there is no use of conversation with people after all. Just like the example of Bartleby and the dead letter office. So from my perspective, I think that Bartleby lost the connection with others just as Yozo happened. And second, although we know that the lawyer is also always trying to help Bartleby, it seems to be a contradiction to me too. His compassion and humanity, which related to work, is quite problematic because at the outset of the lawyer comes across as a very compassionate person. He cares for people and tries to understand his colleagues. So instead of scolding them or dismissing them because of their lack of dedication or their flaws, he tried to understand them and he tried to do with or to say endure them so that his work won't be affected. However, the question is that he's showing his compassion really because only on the commonplace instead of on his works. He really cares for them. He only concerned about his business and that he doesn't want anything to break his business. Therefore, I think that the lawyer symbolized the contradiction between compassion and individual interests. We may give others a hand when someone requires assistance. However, while helping others may damage our personal interests, we will hesitate to help them or even ignore them. And as for the mental disorders, apart from the PTSD symptom which has mentioned, the user suffer from because of his experience and the abnormal growing environment in the past. Bartleby is more likely to suffer from melancholia. Due to the previous working experience in the debt letter office, Bartleby may be affected by negative emotions from the debt letters. Moreover, the indifference between person and person in the Wall Street deteriorates Bartleby's symptoms. What's more, people in the past, such as Bartleby colleagues, might regard the patient of mental disorder as an eccentric person. Therefore, they might discriminate them and try to get rid of them instead of giving any assistance. And these are the main reasons why Bartleby starved to death in the end. The depression affected him, making him being lack of motivation to do his work in the beginning, and no one tries to interact with him to soothe his negative emotions. And finally, the depressions affect him badly, which make him unwilling to eat in the end. When he was arrested, and finally he starved to death. After this, we can figure out that both of them suffer from mental disorder originated from unhealthy environments which they encountered in their life. What's more, in the modern world, we have already known more about the mental disorder compared to the past. However, people still feel scared to interact with those who have mental disorders, and this only makes the situation getting worse. Hence, we should not discriminate against those who act weird or eccentric or being indifferent to them. Instead, offering them help timely and trying to communicate with them to soothe their negative emotions may be the best way to cure their mental disorders. 我到这边结束。
好，就这样，那就。